I remember many years ago when I started covering personal finance, when everybody would talk about very straight-jacketed approach to, okay, now you're single, you're planning up till about 30, you're getting married, then you plan with your husband, then you have child number 1, then child number 2. It was a very straight-line approach. But now I think we'll all agree that life many times doesn't go in a straight line. You may be single, may not be single, you may be divorced, you may have kids, you may not have kids. So how should the approach to financial planning and financial decision-making and ownership change? What is it that women and their families need to do differently? Sumaira.
So, the very first thing is that this conversation must start earlier and earlier. So, there is this big taboo around talking about finance at home.
Yeah.
बच्चे सुन लेंगे, बच्चों को मत बताओ. But I feel that, maybe in very adverse situations, if the children are very young, you may want to shield them. But I think, kids who are a little bit older, maybe pre-teen, there is a way to introduce them into, this whole concept, because it's very difficult for somebody to say, okay, now you have got a job and therefore from tomorrow, you must know how to manage your finances. It doesn't work like that. Kids are growing up with, a certain moral code, right? They know what is the family's moral code.
And a big material code. From the iPhones, from this to the holidays, and I want this and I want that. So they know the wants very early.
Which is why it is imperative that, we as parents also introduce them to our money philosophy.
Yeah.
And that will go a long way. So, also, I don't know if it's still happening in households, but earlier there used to be this thought that, the male child should be told, the female child, usko to shaadi karni. That, I'm sure, is changing. To what extent, I cannot say. But that conversation has to start happening earlier and earlier. And I think if kids are growing up, knowing, being aware of how finances are in the family, what the family thinks about it, how they want to handle it, they will grow up to be more, not just financially aware of the situation, but they will be more confident in their life as adults. So if you want that, for adults to be better or more aware financially, it has to start earlier and earlier.
Got that. That's a fair point, great point. Priti, let me ask you, and then I'll ask Neha as well. And now that we're talking about having a seat at the table, so, the awareness part is in our hands. We need to take interest. It starts there. Yeah. But then what? Now, these are tricky conversations. These are difficult conversations, especially if you're married and you have in-laws involved and joint ownership of assets. How does one navigate it?
So I think when we talk to our community members today, we have, close to 11 lakh women who are on the platform, who are asking us these questions. And that is actually the top question. How do I frame this? And again, we go back to what Sumaira just said. I think making this right from the early times, saying this is a life skill that you need to learn. Just like you need to learn cooking, budgeting, all of that, this is a life skill. Financial planning is a life skill that you need to know. I think once you have that understanding of saying, okay, I need to now be on the table. And more importantly, I think to be on the table, because one of the things that I also want to add on to your earlier question was that for women, there is a paradigm shift in our lives, right? For example, there was a time when it was, studying and having children and retiring.
Correct.
Today, if you look at women and their lives, there are like mini retirements that we face, right? Every time you have a child, every time you get married, sometimes just out of choice as well. And lifespans increasing.
You want to take a break,
Absolutely. So you need to actually plan for all of this, and which is why a woman needs to come to the table.